be doing the interpretive talk with you guys today. So Boo is currently munching on some sunflower seeds and nuts. So Jenny and myself recently fed him in this area. So we do supplement 50% of his diet here. The other 50% he gets himself. So 50% that we supplement at the moment is around 28 kilos of fruits and vegetables each and every day, plus some seeds, mixed berries and mixed nuts. So we do try and feed him those at random times and in random places. So we did not feed him to get him out for this tour. It purely just happened to be a good time to throw him in some food. So we mix that up every day. We also never feed him in the same place day after day because we do not want him to associate us or a certain place with food. So we try and mix that up as much as we possibly can. It was just lucky timing that he is right here eating his food right now. So this is the beautiful Boo. He is 23 years old. So the reason that Boo is here at the Grizzly Bear Refuge is unfortunately a bit of a sad story. So his mother was illegally poached and killed by the side of a highway in Wells, British Columbia, when he was just 4 months old. So he was born in the wild. And so after his mother was killed, him and his brother Carrie, the reason for their name is they were found in the Caribou Mountains region. Carrie and Boo both climbed up a tree, which is what their mothers teach them to do if something is to happen to her or if they are to come in danger of any face to face with danger of any type. So they both climbed up a tree, and it did take conservation officers over 24 hours to coax those two cubs down from that tree because they were so frightened with what they had just witnessed. So at the time, it was also protocol to euthanize orphaned grizzly bears. It was seen as more humane than letting them die of dehydration or starvation in the wild. But we're super lucky that Grouse Mountain, which is in Vancouver, it's an animal refuge, it was able to take the two cubs in. So for the first year of Carrie and Boo's life, they lived at Grouse Mountain and they were bottle fed and hand raised back to health, alongside the two grizzly bears that still reside at Grouse Mountain today, Grinder and Cooler. So after all four of those cubs continued to grow when they're about 2 years old, Grouse Mountain soon realised we don't have the facilities to keep 4 grizzly bear cubs, we can only keep 2 of them. So at the time, Grouse Mountain was owned by the same overarching company that Kicking Horse is owned by. So Kicking Horse was able to put their hand up and say, hey, we can take those 2 cubs in. So this facility was then built purposely for the 2 of them. So Carrie and Boo moved in July of 2003. And this is where they were to live out the rest of their lives. So unfortunately, Carrie did pass away during his first winter here with us. He had a spontaneous intestinal twist, which is something quite common in large mammals, something no one can really predict or prevent. So he did pass away during his first winter denning season here. But Boo has continued to thrive, and he is now 23 years old. So in the wild, grizzlies usually live till they're about 20 to 25, but in captivity, they can live 30 to 35. So we're hoping that we still have about 10 years left with Boo. He is doing exceptionally well for his age. So Boo has 20 acres here at the Grizzly Refuge. It's the largest enclosure for a single bear in the entire world. So he's a very, very lucky boy, and he does use every single corner of his enclosure. So he has 4 ponds within his enclosure as well. He's got 2 at the front end of his enclosure that have a stream running through the middle, although that stream is not flowing at the moment as we have not had rain for about 2 weeks. He also has 1 pool smack bang in the middle of his enclosure under that gondola line. That pool he actually dug himself. So in the wild, grizzlies build their own wallows, little water holes for themselves. So it's pretty cool that he was able to do that, and he had that instinct to do so. He also has 1 other pond at the far end of his enclosure. So also at the far corner of his enclosure is a separate 1 acre area, which is his isolation area. So it's fully fenced off from the rest of his enclosure, and it has a gate so we can lock him safely into that area if we need to. We do that quite frequently for around 10 to 15 minutes usually each morning, so that we can enter his main habitat here safely. So while we're in his main habitat, we'll do habitat work such as weed whipping the outsides of his enclosure, as this fence is electric, and so if vegetation is touching it, obviously it shorts out. But we also like to set him up some enrichment in the form of treasure hunts. So This morning, myself and Jenny, one of our other guides, we entered Boo's enclosure down here where that viewing platform is over the corner. We went and we hid his food under rocks, under logs, up trees, just to make it a little bit more difficult for him so he doesn't know exactly where he's going to find his food. So that is one of the forms of enrichment that we use. Another thing that we do for enrichment for him is we make him toys out of fire hose. So fire hose is the most durable material that we have access to. So he has fire hose balls and frisbees and pinatas, all sorts of things that we can wedge his food into, so then he has to work out how he's going to use his claws and his mouth to pull that food out. So it's another great way for enrichment for him. Another thing that we will occasionally do is we'll get a rotting log, there are some in here, get a rotting log and we will smear peanut butter on it and sprinkle sunflower seeds on top. And he has to use his tongue to lick that all off. So try and keep him as mentally stimulated as possible, which is another reason why we never feed him in the same place at the same time, so that he does have to keep guessing and he actually has to use his senses to work out what that food is, because we never feed him in front of him either. So really important that we keep him mentally and physically stimulated. So each and every year Boo does go into a winter dormancy period, as all bears do. Far end of his enclosure around the corner he does have a fully artificial den. So his artificial den is a log cabin. So he's quite a fancy bear. He spends every winter in that log cabin. The reason that he has to have an artificial den is because we need to know where he is at all times. So in Golden, around this area, elevation will usually get around 1.5 meters of snow each and every year. So this fence becomes significantly shorter, and both sides of his enclosure are ski runs in the winter. So it's not safe for us to not know where Boo is at all times, because we don't want him to decide one day that he would like to have a skier for lunch. So he spends every winter in that artificial den, and there are also cameras inside, so he is monitored throughout the entire winter. So leading up to his winter dormancy period, he will continue to eat more. So at the moment he is entering hyperphagia, which is that period where all he is thinking about is food. So we are supplying him with around 40,000 calories of food each and every day. Now we're closer to 50,000 calories just before he enters his winter dormancy. So at the moment that is 28 kilos of vegetables each and every day. So corn, sweet potatoes, apples, carrots, mixed seeds, mixed nuts, mixed berries, those sorts of things. He also forages within his environment as well. So he's got multiple different species of berries within his habitat, and he also has the ground squirrels. So he will sometimes hunt those ground squirrels and have them as a tasty little treat. He also gets meat every couple of days. So this morning he got about a kilo of cod. We mix up that meat every day. So try not to feed him the same type of meat too often so he doesn't become accustomed to it or fussy in any ways. So he can eat every single type of meat except for pork. Pigs and bears do carry the same parasites, and we do feed him all of his meat raw. So it's just safer that we avoid feeding him pork of any type. So we are also a roadkill donation centre. So occasionally he will get a carcass. About 2 months ago he did get a carcass, a deer carcass, which he thoroughly enjoyed. So mix that up as much as we can for him. So when he enters his winter dormancy period, he will be anywhere between 3 and 6 months. So it's purely dependent on the climate. For him, it's usually on that shorter side, sometimes only about 2 months, because the climate here isn't as harsh as in some other areas. So we supply him with natural bedding within his winter den, like hay. He'll also bring his own stuff in there as well, like sticks and branches from trees, just to give it his own personal touch. So when he goes into his winter dormancy as well, he will weigh around 850 pounds. So at the moment he's 680 pounds. Last week he was 640 pounds. So in a week he's put on 40 pounds. Now you're probably wondering, how do we know how much Boo weighs? Yep. So Boo actually has a set of scales within his habitat. It's a little wooden platform, and he is clicker trained to step on those for us. So we never do that in front of the public because it is not a trick for him. It's purely so we can aid him in his care. So we can work out how much food we need to be feeding him. Also allows us to make sure he is hitting those target weights at target times. So clicker trained to step onto those for us. We use a white post as his target, so to speak. We will stick it through this fence. He will move towards that post, bop his nose on it. We will click the clicker just like you would a dog to say, yep, you've done what we want you to do, and then we will reward him for that behavior. So he's very, very good at doing that for us because he does know that he gets a reward for doing that. So we weigh him once a week. We also have a couple of other things that we do with Boo frequently. So again, we never do this in front of the public because he is not a circus animal. We only have these tasks trained in him so we can aid him with his health. So every couple of years we do get a vet out to do a full assessment on him. But when the vet comes out, he does have to be fully tranquilized and sedated. So that's quite stressful for both him and us, and it obviously does carry some risks as well. So once a month we do a visual welfare assessment on him. So in that welfare assessment, he is clicker trained to stand on his hind legs for us. So he'll stand on his hind legs, which allows us to assess underneath his body for cuts, lumps, abnormalities. And also, grizzly bears lose their ability to stand on their hind legs as they age. So it's also a really good indicator on how he is aging, whether he is getting sore in any region. So that is one of the tasks we get him to do during those welfare assessments. Another thing that we get him to do during those welfare assessments is we get him to open his mouth for us. So as with most mammals, including ourselves, our teeth and dental health does deteriorate as we age. So it's important we keep a close eye on that, check for any gum abnormalities, missing teeth, infection, those sorts of things, so that we can get on top of it as quickly as we can. And finally, he is also trained on an emergency recall. Now, thankfully, we've never had to use it in an emergency situation, so to speak. We have used it in the past when we need to get him into a location in a somewhat timely manner. So for that emergency recall, we ring a very, very large bell that has a very loud tone to it, and he will usually respond to that within a couple of minutes. So we could be on that side of his enclosure and he could be over here. When we ring that bell, he will come within a couple of minutes. So allows us to get him into a secure location quickly if ever needed. We have definitely used it in the past when we need to get him into a certain location quickly. So his reward when he comes to that bell is canned oysters. So it's the only time he gets canned oysters, which is probably why he comes running so quickly. We're pretty much ringing his canned oysters bell. So very, very good at doing that, but we do practice it once a month just so he remembers that ring, because obviously if there is an emergency situation, we need to make sure that he does actually answer to it. So that is another one of his skills that we have trained him to do. So another thing as well that I find very interesting about grizzly bears is their reproduction. So grizzly bear mating season is during June and July. However, females actually undergo a process called delayed implantation. So in delayed implantation, the blastocyst, which is essentially the beginning stages of the embryo, it actually free floats in that female's uterus until she enters her winter dormancy period. So it can free float in there for a good couple of months. Then when she enters her winter dormancy period, her body then decides whether or not she is going to implant that blastocyst, and therefore whether or not she is going to have those cubs. So if she's not very healthy, maybe a bit more on the skinny side, and isn't going to be able to successfully raise those cubs, she will simply reabsorb that blastocyst as extra protein. So it's a pretty cool adaptation because it means she is not being forced to have those cubs if she isn't going to be able to successfully raise them. So if she's nice and chunky, nice and healthy, she will have anywhere between 1 and 4 cubs, though it is usually about 2 or 3. And those cubs are then born in January or February. So that is smack bang in the middle of that female's winter dormancy period. So when those cubs are born, they are completely hairless, blind, and have no hearing at all, only weighing around 2 to 3 pounds. So they are very, very small. So they then continuously feed on their mother throughout her winter dormancy, and when she wakes up, they still only weigh around 10 pounds, so they are still very, very small, which is why the mothers teach them that essential skill of climbing up trees, because if they don't know how to do that and they have to come face to face with danger, they don't have much of a chance of survival. So we're super lucky that Boo did remember that skill and was able to climb that tree, because likely he wouldn't be here otherwise. So grizzly bears do lose their ability to climb trees as they get older. They simply become too heavy. So black bears do continue to climb throughout their entire life. So if you see a fully grown bear up a tree, it is likely to be a black bear and not a grizzly bear. So each and every year, Boo does get many visitors, not just in the human form. We are smack bang in the middle of bear country here, so we have many bears that come and visit him every single year. In the past month, I think we've had about 2 grizzlies come right up to his enclosure to say hi, and multiple black bears. In fact, about 3 weeks ago, we actually had a black bear cub enter Boo's enclosure, so managed to slip through that fence, and it did get stuck inside. So we were shut for 4 days while we dealt with that issue. So we're lucky that that black bear did continue to climb trees whenever it came in contact with Boo, because otherwise Boo would likely have killed it. Boo has killed a unlucky black bear that has entered before. So closed for 4 days while we tried to work that out, but thankfully that bear did exit completely on its own, and it has been seen on the mountain since, living a pretty happy life. Don't think it's in a rush to come back, because I don't think it had a very good time in there. So definitely gets lots of bear visitors. He also has had one very, very large visitor. So in October of 2016, a moose was having a pretty bad day. It was being chased by a pack of wolves. We found the prints in the mud, and unfortunately soon its day went from bad to a lot worse, because it made the very bad decision of jumping directly into a grizzly bear enclosure. So Boo did take down that moose. We believe that he spent probably most of that night stalking down the moose, and then he found his perfect opportunity. Based on the tracks and fur found in the mud as well, we are pretty sure that Boo managed to corner that moose into this electric fence and kill it by shocking it to death. So that is exceptionally smart. He used his resources very well. When bears take down large mammals like moose, they usually end up injured in some way. Boo was not injured at all, because he made the fence do the dirty work for him. So definitely shows how smart grizzly bears are. So we actually have the skull of that moose in our interpretive yurt as well. So before you guys head out today, make sure you go and check that out, because it definitely is pretty cool to see. It's pretty much Boo's trophy. Boo has also gone on some adventures of his own. He has escaped not once but twice. So his first escape was in 2006, and the second escape was in 2011. Both times he escaped was during June, which is grizzly bear mating season, and both times he escaped, he dug out underneath this fence. He knows that this fence is electric. He definitely does, because we saw him take down that moose with it. So first time he escaped in 2006, he dug out underneath this fence, and he headed straight up that mountain and down the other side, and was soon spotted by helicopter search crews walking alongside a blonde female grizzly bear. So he has a type, guys. After living his best life out in the wild for 33 days though, staff returned one morning to find Boo waiting at the gate to be let back in. So he returned home completely voluntarily. Grizzly bears do remember their prime feeding grounds. He knows where he can get a good supply of food. He was probably out in the wild saying, hey, does anyone know where I can get some sweet potato? They looked at him like he was mad, so he came back home. So it definitely made the job easier for us. So after that first escape, he was fixed to die down that hormone drive, and we also installed steel plates along the whole perimeter of his enclosure so that he couldn't dig out and escape again. Or at least we thought he couldn't dig out and escape again. In 2011, he managed to find a small gap between the two steel plates. He pried them open, dug out underneath, and this time he headed straight down the mountain towards Cedar Lake, which is about halfway up this mountain. So during his second escape, he was seen once again walking alongside a lightly coloured female grizzly bear, and although he couldn't reproduce that time, it is highly likely that the first time he did. So very high possibility that there are some baby boos in this mountain, which is a pretty cool thing to think about. So After living out in the wild once again for roughly 30 days, Boo returned home once again completely voluntarily. So it just goes to show he definitely does like it here. So after his first escape, he actually lost 100 pounds. So he lost 100 pounds in just 30 days. That is an awful lot of weight in a very short amount of time. The second escape, however, he actually lost no weight at all. So we believe between 2006 and 2011, he developed some natural hunting skills within his habitat here, which was super exciting for us as it's something we weren't sure if he was ever going to be able to develop because he did have a mum to teach him those skills.